All right, what's going on, fight fans? My Jab Jab Talk Nation family. Hope you're doing well. I know it's been a minute since I recorded a video. Life has been lifing, as they say, and I just haven't been able to post content. But of course, as always, when there's big mega fights like we just experienced this past weekend, I'm going to continue sharing my thoughts and posting content on there, okay? So if you are sticking around for the content, thank you so much for your love and support. And of course, if you're new to this YouTube channel, just hit like, subscribe, and let's vibe. All right, let's talk about Fatal Fury. This past weekend, this was a fight fan's dream, right? 2 nights in a row, big name fights, big fights. First one, Friday, May 2nd. It was in the middle of Times Square. I mean, talk about a really unique setting for boxing. Never done before. This is really cool to be able to see boxing right there. Dead smack around all the billboards and all the screens. I thought that was really cool. I'm pretty sure that's probably going to be one and done. I don't think they're going to do that ever again. I'm sure they spent a lot of money on that, but it was great to see it. To see it. Who would have thought, right? In Times Square, they would have a big boxing fight, but I thought that was super dope. Let's talk about that. Okay, let me do a real quick rundown because there's 4 fights that I want to cover. Let's talk about Teofimo Lopez versus Arnold Barboza. My thoughts on that fight. Look, I thought that Teo Lopez looked really good. I thought he was a really good sharpshooter, had a really good smart fight. He was bobbing and weaving. He was moving, but he was also fighting as well. And he was making Arnold Barboza miss and basically made him look just an amateur, like out of his zone. And, props to Arnold Barboza. Actually, I was a fan of his. I'm a fan of what he could do. I think he's a very tough fighter. He comes to fight. I think he showed up to fight. I just think that he just didn't have answers. I thought he got too technical against a really good, sound, technical fighter, and I think that was his biggest mistake. Maybe he'll bounce back and get back on the championship tour. But I just thought that Teo Lopez did what he had to do, showed and proved that he is still one of the top elite fighters. I was a bit not sure whether or not he was going to show up at 100% because he's like Crawford. He's not one of the most active fighters out there. We know he's talented. We know he has the skills to pay the bills, and we know he's a champion, but we just don't see a lot of activity coming from Teo Lopez, which I wish we could see a lot more of because he's so gifted, so gifted. And but Friday night he showed and proved that he is definitely one of the top, or probably the best fighter in the 140 division. I think 147 he could do some damage as well. I make it really entertaining. Can't see him going any higher than that. He's not a big fighter. And I feel like if he continues going up, he'll lose that punch. I think he's lost it already, but he could still do a lot of damage just because he's so skillful. So I really enjoyed the fight, thought it was well-deserved, and I honestly thought that it was the fight of the night. All right, so let's talk about the second fight, Devin Haney versus Jose Ramirez, a former champion. Look, I thought that was a snoozer. It was a boring fight. You could tell Haney was in there. He was very hesitant, wasn't quite confident fully to go in and dominate. I felt like there was an opportunity for Haney to step it up, especially when he was running circles around Ramirez. Ramirez, man, God bless him. I mean, I think he's a great dude, great, champion in the past. I just think that it's time for him to just hang it up and move on with life. I just didn't see like he was just not pulling the trigger, not throwing punches. And when you're chasing people around like that, it's okay if you're, landing a couple shots like we're going to talk about Canelo fight, but he wasn't throwing any punches at all whatsoever. He was just basically following and chasing Haney the whole way through the fight. It was a very boring fight. Ramirez didn't do anything. Haney really didn't do anything either, but he got the job done, and, Haney wins the fight, unanimous decision, clearly. And then let's talk about the Ryan Garcia-Rolly fight. All right, a lot of expectations. We were hoping that this is going to be the fight that entertains us, that gives us a good knockout, within 4 or 5 rounds. A lot of people expected and was predicting Ryan Garcia to just wash out Rolly Romero. What do we get? It was a snoozing fight. It was another boring fight. Romero just came out there and fought a very good, smart, disciplined fight, landed the punches he needed to land, nothing devastating, but nothing to hurt Ryan Garcia, but enough to clearly win the fight. As far as Ryan Garcia, look, I've said this before, y'all. Boxing fans, hear me out. I've said that there's nothing special about Ryan Garcia. Nothing special. I think he's, definitely the left hook and all that, and he has a social media following. I've said this before. There's nothing special about this kid. Nothing. Even with Devin Haney, it wasn't like it was just a washout. Haney had his moments in that fight. It is just, Ryan caught him, and now we know, he had some drugs in his system. He was more energetic and he was fired up. And yeah, I mean, that was that fight, right? And then let's look at, what he did with this fight. I mean, it was just a snoozer. I mean, he couldn't pull the trigger on any fights. And it wasn't like Rolly wasn't moving around all the time. Rolly was willing to get in there and make it happen. But Garcia didn't press the fight. He just didn't show up. He just wasn't throwing punches. And when you don't throw punches, you don't put pressure, you don't use your range, your power to do anything. He had all the tools he needs to be able to beat Romero and potentially knock him out. And we're all predicting that. Nothing. I thought he was going to go into this. Yes, I know it's a year layoff, but I mean, it looked like it, but it also looked like he didn't want to be there, which makes this really interesting about Ryan Garcia, whether or not he even belongs in the ring moving forward. Honestly, I just was not impressed. I've never been impressed by Ryan Garcia ever. I'm one of the few that always been very outspoken about he's nothing special. And a lot of people were calling him the next face of boxing and all this. And, his trainer, Joe Goose, and he's so talented. I've never seen a guy, maybe in sparring, but when it comes to elite fighting, I don't think Ryan Garcia has ever been the guy, period. And we saw that this Friday. So what happens next? I think Ryan Garcia rematches Rolly. Let's run it back. Why not? I don't think I would want to watch that fight, but I think that makes sense. I think he lost the opportunity for the big bag against Haney. That could still happen. But I would like to see Rolly Romero run it back again with Garcia. Why not? I know Garcia, there was some things that he said online about that he just didn't like. He was making excuses. He doesn't like to fight on, outside in the outdoor, all this stuff. I just didn't think he just wanted to fight. I don't think he just wasn't there. I don't think his heart is into it anymore. So I think we're okay. I don't think the boxing community would miss him. He just really hasn't done much and hasn't beaten any of the elite fighters. So, but I mean, I can see that fight happening. I would like to see actually Haney fight Teal Lopez. I think that fight needs to happen. I think that would be a very entertaining fight. I think Haney needs a fight like that. Also with Lopez, I think Lopez, we need to see him against a big fight, a big name like Devin Haney. I think the buildup for that is there. I think they've been talking trash in the past. And I think that fight right there makes sense to me. So that's what I would do. Teal Lopez and Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, and Rolly running it back. And then as far as Jose Ramirez, I think he should just retire. Barbosa, just get back to the drawing board and, fix what he needs to fix. So that's my take on it. It was just a really boring fight. It was just a boring card. It was very underwhelming. It's sad, especially in Times Square. Boxing needed to show up outside of all the lights and glamour and everything going on outside of it. The fight was very underwhelming and did not deliver at all. Very, very sad. Now let's talk about Canelo and Scully. Whew. Can I take a break on this one? Okay. Speaking of being boring, a boring fight and underwhelming, that is what we got, part 2 with Canelo and Scully. Another snoozer. It was really interesting. I saw a Canelo that was there ready to fight. We saw him press. It's kind of hard to judge him because you could tell he was pressing the fight. He wanted to make the fight happen. So definitely Scully, you need two people to make it really interesting. Scully was there to survive. It's crazy how some people were even saying that Scully won. I've seen, people talk about it. He thought he won the fight. I thought it was ridiculous. The scorecard was ridiculous. Now, I thought clearly Canelo won all the rounds. Maybe one or two you can give to Scully. I just thought that he just landed the most notable, impactful punches out of the whole fight. Not his fault. He was chasing. He talked about in his post interview that he was really frustrated with the fact that he just doesn't, he knew that he was going to go into a style fight that was going to be survival. in survival mode all night. That's exactly what happened. It was really, really bad fight. Really, the whole card wasn't entertaining at all. But the Canelo and Scully was really, really boring. I did see a Canelo that was just waiting a little bit too long. I think we all could agree. Curious to know your thoughts. I felt like Canelo could have done a little bit more to press him a little bit. I think even when he was bouncing around, I think he could have done some jabs. I think the jabs, it was non-existent. I think he could have jabbed his way in to set up more punches. And I think that he could have probably slowed him down a lot earlier than he did. I think Scully wasn't well conditioned. Both of them were. But Scully, because Canelo was not punching much, it allowed Scully to go 12 rounds at the speed that he did. I mean, he was pretty consistent from round 1 to round 12. So Canelo, I don't know what happened to the jab. I don't know what happened to that. I don't know what happened to really doing a great job of cutting off the ring, despite the fact that I know Scully was running around. I think Canelo could have punched a little bit more. So is that a sign that Canelo is slowing down? He's maybe becoming overly too calculated, maybe. And maybe that's because, we may be seeing the decline of Canelo. We don't know, which is going to be really interesting because they made the announcement. It was a big announcement last night. Of course, we're really excited. Crawford and Canelo officially in September. That's going to happen. This is going to be a really interesting fight. I talked about how Canelo definitely has all the pros and the fact that it's his weight and the power and all that. But the thing that's going to be, and I'll be talking a little bit more about this as we move closer to the fight. The interesting thing about this fight is that Crawford has a winner's mindset. Crawford can fight. His IQ is there. He can box. He can punch. I think that if he goes in there wanting to fight, and I think he will fight a lot more fearlessly than all the other previous opponents, that is alone, forget the weight division jump. That alone is going to make this fight interesting. That's going to make the fight interesting. I mean, even if you look at Canelo and Charlo, when he fought Charlo at the 154 pounder, I think that when there was moments where Charlo decided to, commit to fighting, there was little moments. But what if we got a Charlo that committed to actually fighting a Canelo and standing up, right? And we saw with Edgar Berlanga, but they're just not consistent. They still back away. And rightfully so. I mean, they're scared of the power and all that. I get it. But I think Crawford's mindset, he's the type of athlete that I think he'll fight Canelo and he'll go toe-to-toe and really lean into fighting him. And that is the X factor. That's the thing that we're not really talking about. And that's the thing that's going to make this fight a lot more interesting than people think. And we're going to see a Crawford that will fight Canelo. And it's going to be interesting to see. This is going to be the exposure, whether or not Canelo could step up to an athlete like Crawford with that IQ, with that experience, with another undisputed fighter. Does Canelo have the goods to be able to put him away? I could see Crawford easily, not easily, but I could see Crawford pulling off a close decision if Canelo fights the way he fought last night. And I'm pretty sure Crawford saw that. He was like, hey, this guy doesn't really punch a lot. As long as I'm smart and fight defensively and get in there when I can and score my punches, maybe he'll just not take a lot of punches, but I think he'll throw enough and more to be able to pull off a victory. I think he could pull it off. I think he has the skills and the athleticism to be able to make this a very competitive fight for Canelo. So it's going to be interesting to see what type of Canelo we see in this Crawford fight. But for the most part, I think this is going to be a very 50-50 fight because I just didn't see anything extra from Canelo. And take away the factor that Scully was just not fighting, but I don't know. I think Crawford will fight. So I think Canelo's camp has to realize that we're not going to see a Scully part 2 in Crawford. We're going to see a guy that we need to make sure we prepare and throw more punches and get more active on, and not rely on big punches. Because I think Crawford's been around those type of fighters that he'll be able to dismantle those type of fighters. So yeah, I don't think the weight class is going to be meaningful here. Now, he just has to stay away from that punch, and I think Crawford's smart enough to be able to do that. So anyways, I'll talk a little bit more about the fight on Fatal Fury weekend. Boring, disappointing, underwhelming. I can come up with a bunch of adjectives, by the way, leave yours down below. I don't know. Boxing did not deliver this past weekend. It was really unfortunate with such a big, weekend, Cinco de Mayo weekend. We were expecting a lot more from these champions. I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but things are shifting and people are getting exposed, and it's going to be really interesting moving forward who shines in these divisions. So we'll see. But Scully, boring. Canelo, he's gonna have to step it up against Crawford, but that's gonna be a good fight for September. So that's it. Let me know in the comment section what you thought down below. Look forward to it. Subscribe, like. Look forward to the next one, y'all. Jab Jab Talk. Let's keep it going. Peace.